Alphino, though I concede it may not always be apparent, I was ever your grandsire's finest pupil.
Papalymo Totalimo was a scion of the Seventh Dawn, our friend and one of the greatest allies we have ever known. He's a Lalafell plainsfolk, aged 42 by the beginning of A Realm Reborn. His garb is rather unique, sporting a dark robe and gaskins, with shiny yellow gauntlets, making him stand apart from others of the thaumaturge discipline. A signature part of his dress is the monocle he wears on his right eye. It's likely this is meant for reading, as he has been seeing without it. However, given the significance of an eye patch to black mages, it would not surprise me if his monocle served a similar purpose. The story of the finest pupil begins in the nation of Sharlayan over 50 years ago, where Papalymo was born. Like many Sharlayan children, he attended the studium from a young age, and graduated second in his class. After graduating, he encountered the then Archon Master Louisoix, and began to study under the now legendary figure, quickly becoming his finest student. When he came of age, Papalymo's father gifted onto him the treasure of the Totalimo family, the FFXIV staff, which has been passed down for generations. At a later date, Papalymo would earn the title of Archon, but it was never explicitly stated in what field. But given the study I recently did on Archons, my guess would be a field of arcane spellcraft, as Papalymo has been shown to conjure some very unique spells in his time, both destructive and supportive. One example is the spell he used to empower Ida, allowing her to break her limits and utilize a powerful attack. During his time with Louisoix, they would both travel to Eorzea, visiting many places of interest, and others where trouble was brewing. Louisoix would later form an organization called the Circle of Knowing, whose goal was to save Eorzea. Papalymo was one of the first to join, alongside many of the allies we know today. Years before the beginning of the game's storyline, Louisoix would introduce Papalymo to a young Hure named Ida, Lisa's sister. Both Archons would become her friends, and also helped her get an education in Sharlayan. While not one for study, Ida had great knowledge in the arts of pugilism, even earning the Archon's mark for her efforts. By Papalymo's recommendation, she was inducted into the Circle of Knowing. Papalymo and Ida would become partners, spending much of their time in the Black Shroud as part of their duties in the Circle of Knowing. Sadly, Ida would die around 6 years before Cartano. Both of them were on a humanitarian mission in Girabania, helping to aid refugees with getting out of the Imperial-occupied region. It was there that Ida was slain by Imperial soldiers, while ensuring the safety of an Alamegan child.
Ida died 6 years ago, on a mission to smuggle refugees out of Alamigo. They say she was overwhelmed by Imperial soldiers when she stayed behind to save a little girl. She was so strong. There must have been a lot of them.
He returned to Sharlayan alone. The only memento he could bring back was Ida's signature mask. He gave the mask to Lise as a keepsake of her sister. But Lise, who loved her sister dearly, wished to keep her memory alive, and aspired to become Papalymo's new partner in the circle.
When Papalymo brought me Ida's mask, it was meant as a keepsake, but I decided I wanted to be his new partner, to keep alive all the good that she had done. I didn't want to become Ida, exactly. At the time, though, I still didn't know who I was myself, and it almost seemed easier to play the role.
Papalymo didn't agree right away, but finally relented after seeing her determination. He then used his arcane mastery to imprint Archon tattoos on her neck, after which she donned her late sister's clothes, mask, and her signature gut wrenchers. Papalymo wasn't the only one with knowledge of this, however.
You've known all along, haven't you, that I wasn't Ida?
Of course. We all recognized you at once. 'Twas Papalymo who persuaded us to maintain the charade.
It was silly to think I could fool you. I knew that even then, but I sort of decided not to know.
He took Ida under his wing and was her guardian, tutor, and pretty much a father figure to her, in many ways like he had done for her older sister. Both would partner up and head to the Black Shroud, both of them nearly losing their lives in an airship crash. Kane Senna would come to their aid, and both of them continued to work in the 12's Wood for some time, aiding in the cleansing of the Green Wraith, and investigating Gridanian preparations for potential war with the Garlean Empire. It was during these events that they would encounter the adventurer that would one day be their steadfast ally, the Warrior of Light. During these events, the sky would turn dark, with a star shower forming overhead, which also coincided with the Battle of Silver-Tier Skies. Not long after this, he would be introduced to Minfilia and her group, the Path of the 12, devoted to the study of the Echo and protection of those with the gift. As the fall of Dalamud was drawing closer, Papalymo would stand with his circle allies to fight against Gaius van Baelsar. He utilised his spellcraft against the Legatus, and used Orifex to absorb projectile shots from his gunblade. Before the Battle of Cartano, he would gather with the entire Circle of Knowing one final time, as they prepared to spread across the realm to invoke the summoning of the 12, in order to halt Dalamud's descent and save Eorzea. Both he and Ida were present in the 12's Wood, praying to a mark of the 12 as part of the summoning ritual. Given he was so far away, he was spared an ill fate on the fields of Cartano, which claimed his mentor Louisoix and so many others. In the wake of this calamity, what remained of the Circle of Knowing would come together with the survivors of the Path of the 12, and under the leadership of Minfilia, the Scions of the 7th Dawn were born, with Papalymo becoming a founding member. Both he and Ida continued their partnership as part of the Scions, aiding the peoples of Eorzea, in particular those residing in the 12's Wood. It would be 5 years after the calamity that he would again meet the adventurer who would become the Warrior of Light, watching over them as they slept and received Hydaelyn's blessing of light. Together, they would stand firm against the Masked Mage, an agent of the Ascians, who was causing discourse in the 12's Wood. Seeing the resolve of this adventurer, he would reveal his and Ida's membership in the Scions of the 7th Dawn, inviting the adventurer to their base of operations, the Waking Sands. Papalymo was later present during the attack on the Waking Sands. Though he stood and fought with his fellow Scions, he and many others were captured and taken to a Garlean base in Mordona. He would not remain a prisoner for long, however, for the remaining Scions as well as Garland Ironworks would come to their rescue.
Take the leader, kill the rest. What the?
Papalymo! Minfilia!
What took you so long?
He stood with the Scions on the newly reforged Eorzean alliance to push the Garlean Empire back outside the borders of the realm, and greeted the Warrior of Light upon their triumphant return from the depths of the Praetorium, and was also overjoyed to see his fellow Scion and Archon Thancred with him.
Yay! Our Warrior of Light. Look! Thancred is with him!
Thank the 12!
Thank Hydaelyn.
He looked on happily as the leadership of the Eorzean alliance declared the 7th Astral Era, no doubt thinking of his old friend and mentor Louisoix, and how proud he would have been this day. He continued to serve the Scions in every capacity, as they would labour to stabilise the realm, alongside their new Crystal Brave allies. During the bloody banquet, he couldn't believe any of the charges levied against the Warrior of Light or the Scions, his life experiences and wisdom seeing the true culprits before him. As the Scions began to flee Ul'dah, the Braves and Blades closed in, so he and Ida chose to remain behind to prevent anybody else from pursuing.
The rest of you go on ahead. I'll handle this lot.
By yourself? I suppose I shall just have to join you. We will hold our pursuers here. Hurry, now! Find this tunnel of Thancred's.
Now look what you've done.
Ida, are you all right? There are just too many of them.
I'm fine. I could do this all day. How about you?
Nearing the end of my tether.
Together, they both fought hard to keep them at bay. Now getting weary, they had one more card yet to play.
And if you think we'll leave the stewardship of Eorzea to the likes of your masters, then you're sorely mistaken.
Sorry I dragged you into this, Papalymo.
'Tis hardly the first time, and I'll be damned if it will be the last. Let them have it, Ida!
I was hoping you'd say that.
It's not known exactly what happened in the aftermath of this powerful attack, but both he and Ida would escape capture and flee into the wilderness, eventually turning up undercover in Little Alamigo, donning a dark robe and without his monocle. While the Scions remained in hiding, he and Ida used this chance to investigate a secretive Alamigan resistance faction called the Masks, who were led by an equally mysterious individual known only as the Griffin, who we later learn is Ilbert. But he realised they could not get bogged down in this investigation forever, for many matters of the realm needed their attention. But for now, they continued their duty. Even after the Scions were cleared of any wrongdoing and allowed to return to the Rising Stones, Papalymo and Ida were still out of contact. They both continued their investigation, which led them to a rally being held by the Griffin's proxies, and reunited with Alphino and the Warrior of Light.
What are you two doing here?
I could ask you the same thing. Well, well, this is quite the surprise.
He was gladdened that his allies were unharmed, and was saddened by the confirmed losses of others. His former mentor had a particular affinity with prophecy, especially when it came to ill tidings. Perhaps this rubbed off on Papalymo, for he could sense something dark was coming, especially with all they learned about renewed resistance activity. As such, he would approach the Warrior of Light with a request.
My friends, if I may, I would ask that you entrust Tupsimati to me. Clouds gather upon the horizon, and as Master Louisoix's disciple, I would keep it close at hand. Thank you. I shall guard it well. I suspect the ill tidings from Girabania will be held as a turning point. The beginning to a bloody end. The business of war was ever conducted with the coin of self-sacrifice. 'Twas Master Louisoix himself who taught us that such costs are not to be ignored or denied. And so, I shall embrace them. When the time comes, I will make my choice, as you will yours.
Together, the Scions warned the Eorzean alliance of an imminent Alamegan resistance attack on Baelsar's Wall, the giant walled structure that divides Alamigo from Eorzea. Realizing the trap they had just walked into, Papalymo and the other Scions ventured up the wall, intent on capturing the Griffin and ending the conflict before full-scale war could break out. They fought their way through the Garleans and the Griffin's troops, and successfully fought and weakened Ilbert.
You've beaten me, aye. But you cannot stop what I've begun. Behold, a glimpse of things to come!
However, Ilbert played his trump card, and the very reason he gathered everyone at the wall in the first place.
We did it! We showed the bastards!
Aye! Victory is ours!
And who knows, lads? Mayhap the Eorzeans will finally see sense when the enemy turns up on their bloody doorstep.
This is for Alamigo, for Eorzea.
Vanguards! Attack!
Seven hells! Do you hear that?
War machines! How did they get here so quickly?
Stand your ground! For the resistance! Mighty Rolker, grant us the strength to crush our...
With both the recovered eyes of Nidhogg, he threw himself from the wall and fell to his death. This act, along with the death and destruction around him, combined with their fervent prayers, awoke the eyes and all the Aether in the area, which began to merge as one, to summon a new and almighty primal, one that would lay waste to not only the Garlean-occupied Alamigo, but also Eorzea. As Papalymo stood with his friends, looking at this new primal taking shape, he must have thought this was what Louisoix had seen as Bahamut ushered in a new Umbral era. Unwilling to let this new primal end the 7th Astral Era by bringing about another calamity, Papalymo stepped forward.
This light, is it...
His death completed the ritual. The primal is taking shape.
Well, can't we stop it? There must be something we can do!
There is one thing.
What? Hey! Where do you think you're going?
Master Louisoix briefly contained Bahamut by means of a potent spell of sealing. I will now attempt to do the same.
But that's impossible! We would need hours to collect the necessary ether, if not days!
Ah, Alphino, though I concede it may not always be apparent, I was ever your grandsire's finest pupil.
Tipsamati, of course! The staff still holds enormous power, broken or not.
Don't you dare, Papalymo! I know how that spell works.
It is time to leave!
Quite right. Quickly now, off you go. The further away, the better.
No! If you're staying, then so am I.
No, Ida. There is a path only you can walk, and it must not end here. Not like this. Take her! Please, you have to take her!
What? No! Damn it, Thancred! Put me down! Thancred!
This is one battle you cannot fight. Away with you! Go!
He bid the Warrior of Light farewell and asked them to leave the primal to him. Depending on your answer, he will either bid you goodbye or blast you back with a spell by force to save your life.
Hilda! I think he means now!
I bid thee farewell again, my dear Ida. Now, let us see how good a student I truly was.
The spell was cast, and the new primal was sealed away. However, the cost of the spell was his life, for the aether it required not only made Tipsamati disappear, but also caused him to fade away. The sealing spell was only temporary, however, and there was a risk of the primal breaking free very soon. but Papalymo's sacrifice bought his allies enough time to activate Omega, who flew to Baelsar's wall to engage the primal it detected.
You gave too much for us to waste this chance, Papalymo. So this is for you. And me.
As Omega arrived, the spell was broken, and much like with Bahamut years before, the primal Shinryu broke free, as the last of Papalymo's spells and aether dispersed, ending his presence in the realm of Eorzea. Lys would confirm this, as the aetheric tattoos that she bore were Papalymo's magic, and they faded away at the same time, confirming indeed that he was now gone.
Omega destroyed the cocoon. Papalymo's spell is fading. It was bound to his ether, you see. And if the connection is broken... The light's gone. It was all we had left of him.
Ida.
I don't blame anyone. I knew what was going to happen. I knew the spell Papalymo meant to cast would drain away his life force. I knew that it would only buy us a little time.
No one truly knew the fate of Papalymo's aetheric soul, given the energy necessary to invoke the sealing spell. Happily, however, we found out as we ventured into the ethereal sea in order to meet Hydaelyn herself. We encountered many souls of former foes that were drawn to us, intent on barring our path. But just as we drew in the souls of former enemies, we also drew in those of allies. As the soul of Ilbert stood before us, Papalymo's soul manifested in the form of Tupsamati, and unleashed a powerful spell to weaken Ilbert, so we could easily dispatch him. I personally like to think that his soul, before being used to fuel the sealing spell, was beckoned by Hydaelyn, so he could rest eternally in the eternal blue of the ethereal sea. A fitting reward for a champion of the realm. In the city of Sharlayan, we met a distinguished Lalafell, who was revealed to be Papalymo's father, who was eternally proud of his son, and thanked the Warrior of Light for being with him at the very end. As a final act of support from our dear friend and ally, his voice joins with many as we walk forward in Ultima Thule.
From tragedy and sacrifice, we rise to greet a new dawn.